Kyle, we've put it off long enough. We've got WNBA playoff stuff to talk about.
Yes. Yes. Um, I'm just Logan. We got a new WNBA playoff format announced officially today. Let's just hop right into that. We've got some other topics that we'll hit on, but we'll hit those on the end here. Let's come in hot with this. They've changed it. The Chicago Sky were so they came into the playoffs and messed around and broke teams down in such a way as a 6 seed that the WNBA had to just throw that whole old playoff structure out and say, you know what, we're gonna make this like resemble some other playoff situations here. So we have eliminated the buys and the double buys, Logan. That's the first thing that I think is impactful. Before we talk about series and whatnot, they've eliminated buys, and in particular, that huge advantage of the double buy scenario for the 1 and 2 seeds. Why do you think that's such a significant change for them to make?
Well, I like this. I think there needs to be a certain amount of consistency between the playoffs and the regular season. And there was no advantage in professional sports like the top seed in the WNBA was getting in the playoffs. It kind of eliminated the chance for there to be complete chaos this year, notwithstanding, because you had a Chicago Sky team that was much better than the 6th seed, but because they sucked at the beginning of the year, they fell to the 6th seed. But for the most part, you don't get crazy upsets because what was happening was you had the top 2 teams in the league automatically in the semis. So you knew who was going to be in the Final Four, and you knew they were going to be playing the lowest possible seed. There was no reseed, or there was reseeding in the old system. So every round, the lower seed would get, they would be forced to be the most amount of underdog they could possibly be. Whereas this new system is just a true 8-team bracket. It's a lot easier to visualize. I think it's going to be a lot easier for new fans of the league to grab hold of, which is why my take on this is that they almost had to do this. I think I like almost all of the changes. I think universally they make sense. You're still going to get a 1 seed versus an 8 seed, and instead of sitting for like a week and a half getting cold on the bench watching other teams play, they're going to continue right from the regular season into the playoffs and not have any rest to knock off.
Right.
So for the most part, I think the best teams are going to continue to move through the playoffs. But there's also a little bit of an advantage now. If you knock off that top seed or the 2nd seed or something like that, your path doesn't get reseeded. You just continue on through the bracket. It means that it's going to be a little bit easier to predict matchups,
right.
And maybe hype up potential clashes down the line, which for the sake of this show and for watchability, I think is all really great. But for the most part, I'm glad the buys are gone. I think it's good that the 1 and 2 seeds were getting an advantage, but it just seemed too vast. And
Agreed.
I want there to be kind of a balance between the best teams in the regular season should be the best teams in the postseason, and most of the time they should probably be in contention to win it all. But I want a chance of chaos. I want the Phoenix Mercury to be able to make a run if they get in as the 6 or 7 seed or what have you, because that's fun. Next year if the New York Liberty suddenly catch fire at the end of the season and they roll right in the playoffs as the 6th seed, it just other sports work this way already. It kind of comes down to like how well are you playing at the right time of year,
right?
And I think that matters a lot more now. So. They also did away with single elimination rounds. That's kind of the companion.
Yeah, that's another like interesting part of this is not just not just eliminating the bye situation, but also completely eliminating the single elimination round. So yeah, what kind of an impact do you think that's going to have?
Well, this might be my only controversial opinion, and I think for the most part everybody's good with these changes. I think it's now a best of 3 and then a best of 5, and then the finals is a best of 5. That's the new setup. I think that's better for the league. It's better for the sport. It makes the most sense. But I'll still kind of miss the single elimination rounds, if I'm being honest, because I think some of the most dramatic moments in the past couple of years of the postseason have happened in those opening rounds. And it kind of captures the pure magic of the March Madness, anything can happen, thing that you get with basketball. But you had to do it, right? Like this is a professional league that's trying to take steps, further into the spotlight, get more media exposure, pitch things to, like get TV deals and pitch things to audiences. And I think you can't do that if you don't know who's going to host what round, and someone's going to get reseeded or someone's going to get bumped out, and it's going to throw off the whole, you know, I don't know. It just helps, I think, from a marketing standpoint. And
Right.
as much as it sucks, like that is part of what this league needs a lot of right now. So I'll be sad to see the single elimination rounds go, but it's for something better.
I think that when you can build a little bit of a storyline within a series, I think that's always good. I'll kind of take that approach to it, that while, yeah, there was drama during those single elimination rounds, I think that the ability to build some sort of drama, like let's say that low seed comes in and steals game one. Now all of a sudden people are watching the rest of that series. You know what I mean? Instead of having now it be completely over and it's like, oh, cool, upset, and then they move on to play another team. If that low seed just steals game one, all of a sudden more eyes get on it because they're like, oh, what's about to go down in this series, not just in that one-off game. So I think that could be a positive spin.
We all feel this way, right? Every time there's a really dramatic finish to a single elimination game, we think, wow, that was a great game. I really wish we could get more. Like I want to see the retaliation. Like
right.
I want to see the part back, like I want to see Phoenix strike back or Minnesota strike back. Like, can they make adjustments? And that's really what playoff basketball is all about, is the adjustments and the tinkering and figuring other teams out and like executing better in game two. And now you get to see a lot more of those teams kind of develop and figure each other out instead of go and play like this high stakes one-off. I still kind of wish they would do something, and maybe this is for down the road, because right now you can't do it with 12 teams. You can't have 10 teams playing playoff games in a 12-team league.
Right.
But I do sort of enjoy what the NBA is doing right now with the 9 and 10 seeds getting a chance to play their way into the playoffs. But it's like a treacherous path to get there. They make it pretty difficult. I would like to see at some point down the line, like maybe you give the 8 and 9 seed like a one-off against each other for that last,
like a wild card spot.
Yeah. Like baseball's game 163 is one of the most fun things in sports.
Right.
So I could see them doing that, but this simplifies so much, and it's easy. Like it's the easy, digestible. If you're used to American sports and playoff formats, WNBA now kind of has followed suit with how all of those work, and I think it's going to be for the best. I don't think any teams are going to be complaining at the end of next year that like, oh, if we would have had the double bye, like you still got to lose a 3-game series to the 8 seed from the 1 spot in order to get upset. Like that's pretty hard to do.
You got to get beat by the 8 seed twice.
You're going to have no one to point fingers at but yourself if you find yourself in a position where you're like, well, if we would have gotten a free ride to the semis, maybe we would have won. Like,
yeah. So
I won't shed a tear for those teams.
Interesting question coming through in the chat right now. Our Jason, who actually was just on the stream earlier with us, he's popping in. He's saying, wish that conferences still meant something. We still technically have East and West conferences. Do you think that we see a return to conferences meaning something if we do get some league expansion? Let's say the league expands from 12 to 16 teams. Do you think we see a change in the playoffs instead of just a pure 1 through 8 seed, but by going to an East or West playoff structure like we've seen in say the NBA, for example?
I think you have to have way more teams and way more games for conferences to matter, because to me, conferences and divisions exist so that you get more interesting games against regional rivals, right? That's what they originally were for.
Right.
Is like the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox play 162 games a year, but they play 20 against one another. And those are the games people generally want to tune into. They want to buy tickets to. They want to watch on TV. Like even if you're a hardcore fan, you're probably not watching every single night your baseball team play, but you're going to tune into the big division matchups to see like, hey, are we going to move up in the division rankings? Are we going to like hold off the team that's chasing us down in the standings? That sort of thing. The WNBA season is so quick, and there's so few teams that you don't really get the feel for. I mean, maybe you have like Minnesota, LA, and Phoenix, Seattle, and maybe now Chicago, LA. You have some matchups that definitely carry like some more weight. Vegas has like kind of a rivalry, like a one-off rivalry with a different team every year. But there's no like true draw that's like, oh, even if I don't watch every other game, like I'm definitely going to tune into that one. And
Right.
and they play 4 times a year, so like they really get familiar with one another. And so for that reason, I don't think conferences matter to me that much. They do in other sports. I'm not one of those people that wants the NBA to just be like a strict 1 through 16. I think that's dumb, frankly. But but until there's more expansion, until the season gets longer, to me, I kind of want to see every team play everybody else roughly an equal amount of times. And then when it comes time to seed the playoffs, just make it best to worst. Because otherwise you're going to end up in situations where
like your fourth place team is the number 1 seed in like the East Conference or something like that.
That's much more likely to happen with a shorter season. So
gotcha.
I don't mind how it's set up right now, but when we're doing this show in 2040 and we've got 20 teams and 10 teams in each conference
and playing 60 games a season.
Yeah, and you've got players that maybe the rivalries are a little bit more juicy than they are right now. I'm not trying to say that there aren't rivalries. I just think like for the most part, there's so much player movement in the WNBA, and like so many of the rosters are already really familiar with each other because there's only 144 players in the league.
So you get traded, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
I already know. You get traded twice, and you're like, I know a third of the league or a fourth of the league. Yeah.
It's not like, it's almost like there's already that closeness in the league that other leagues don't have. So I don't know how much it would bring to introduce like divisions and conferences in a way that was really meaningful to the playoffs.
So I do like that we're seeing full series now. We've got basically 3 in the first round. It's a pure, 1 seed versus 8 seed, 2 versus 7, and on for that 3-game series. Move into the semis, and then in the semis you've got a 5-game series, and then the finals still a 5-game series. So in reality, you're not adding a whole lot of time into this. You're really like time-wise, as far as on the calendar, it looks very similar. You are adding a lot more games, which I get excited about. I think that they're adding more playoff games while still only covering generally the same spread of like physical calendar days. I think that's a big upside there. If we can get more games, that's more times that we're going to have opportunities for television and for coverage. I think that's a big win for the